So Survival is the new game mode that will be coming to The Division with patch 1.5. And let me just start off by saying that I believe that this is probably the best DLC to come to The Division yet. Does that mean that the previous DLCs weren't that good to begin with, or that Survival is just that good? I think it's a bit of both. The first time that you launch up Survival, it definitely feels amazing. The atmosphere is great, and you're thrown out of your comfort zone right away. There's a death timer on your character, and the moment you go outside of the safe house that you start off in, you will see nothing but snow, and learning how to deal with the sickness and the cold while trying to understand what the hell it is that you need to do, that is pretty crazy. It all comes at you at the same time. You are one of the last survivors, and now you gotta scavenge through the city, either alone or with some other players that you might meet, in order to actually survive. Sounds pretty cool, right? The one thing that I actually said on the stream when I played this for the very first time is that it reminded me a bit of those older 2013 and 2014 trailers, which was kind of strange since we didn't even know that the game would have any crazy weather effects up until the very alpha. It was never shown off in those trailers, however, Survival did manage to recapture that initial experience for me, or at least the feeling. The mission that you actually have in Survival is to craft a special mask so you can get inside of the Dark Zone, and then once you're in the Dark Zone you'll be able to craft a flare gun there, which you can use to extract yourself and any sealed caches that you might have picked up while you were in the Dark Zone. Those sealed caches of course go to your main character and you get to keep those as a reward for completing Survival. The gameplay does have some surprises, with I believe the highlight to be the Hunters, which are the new enemy types that act just as the players. They have the same movement, they roll around, they have skills such as the heal, and they have pretty mean weapons as well. They are quite a challenge the first time that you meet them. But Survival isn't all perfect. It does have some issues, and today I wanted to go over those as well. What I've noticed is that my experience with Survival is vastly different depending if I go through it alone or if I go in it with a 4-man group. If I play solo, especially when I play the PvP mode, things can get rough. Sometimes you will meet multiple players in a row all out to kill you, and the NPCs are definitely not to mess around with. They do a good amount of damage and they have a good amount of health as well. I actually died quite some times when playing the game mode solo. That is simply because I was so used to being able to ignore the NPCs and run past them. You know, the thing that everybody does in the Dark Zone. And I basically have had moments where I ruined the whole run for me just because I wasn't paying attention. And then the NPCs shot me in the back and they dropped my health a lot faster than I expected. But that is a good thing. A game mode like this should keep you on your toes. You shouldn't be able to just walk past the NPCs. And for solo play, it does definitely keep you on your toes. The NPCs are challenging. It's quite difficult, but it also feels right. However, I feel that difficulty and even a lot of the new mechanics introduced into Survival, they start to fall short when you get into group play. The game simply gets too easy and too much face roll. Dying from the cold isn't really a problem anymore when you have a group, because even if you die on purpose, your teammates can just come and revive you, and that puts you back to 2/3 of your health bar. I remember a moment in my very first playthrough when I teamed up with Eric's. We couldn't kill some of the NPCs because they had too much damage and too much health, so what we did is that we put Eric's behind cover and let me shoot at the enemy, and when I would go down it wouldn't be a problem because he would be able to revive me anyway. I died for about 5 times in a row, but again, it didn't matter because he could always press the revive button. Of course, if you're playing with more players as well, the NPCs start to fall over a lot quicker, and the only bad thing about grouping, I guess, is that you have to share the loot, but that's not really a problem, because I feel like an hour is more than enough to survive, so you can just give the medicine away if you feel like it. And also, with more players, you're gonna kill NPCs a lot faster, thus you're gonna get a lot more loot in total, and this loot isn't really a problem anymore. Because of this, you know, Survival, it kind of feels like a side mission from a Fallout game. Go from point A to point B while not forgetting to do Objective C on your way over there. As I said, everyone has an hour on their clock before they die, but a good group of players, they will be done with the session within half an hour, maybe even 20 minutes, meaning that nobody ever needs any medicine. Everybody can also get hungry or thirsty after a certain time of not eating or drinking, but being hungry or thirsty, that only gives the player very small debuffs, which might actually hurt the player a bit if he's solo, but it doesn't nearly have a big enough of an impact in group play. I felt like that I never really needed to take any consumables. That doesn't mean that I didn't take them. I pretty much always had consumables on me. They were so plentiful, they were so easy to find, so if you have them anyway, you might as well take them, right? But I definitely felt that hunger or thirst, it would never really get in my way. It did not once. Not even that much when I was playing solo. After playing more and more into a group setting, I started to see that it is actually really difficult to die. And if you understand the mechanics of the survival game mode, you are essentially left with doing speedruns to try and get the loot rewards for completion as fast as possible. And that can get really, really repetitive. What I can compare survival to is a horror game, a scary game, one with a lot of jump scares. Something like the old Slenderman games, I used to play those a lot. The first time that you play through a game like this, it's all scary and exciting. You don't know what's going to happen or when it is going to happen. And that makes you stick on your toes. You have to be careful around every corner. However, by the 10th playthrough of a game like this, you virtually know every sound effect that the game can throw at you. Or you know how the monster works, or in this case, how the mechanics work. So that sense of survival is gone. You're just looking to complete the level and looking to get through it. And of course, you could say that this is true for pretty much every game that has ever been created. Once you complete this or that story mission, you already know what is going to happen, so it will not be as interesting the second time around. And while you're definitely right there, no doubt about that, the thing is that the survival game mode misses the one thing that makes replaying the same content in a Division worth your while. And that is different character builds and build variety. If I look at something like the storyline missions, incursions, HVTs or the Dark Zone, there are always players looking to play it in a different way. There are, I don't know how many YouTube videos out there showing off the newest and the best builds out there, including the ones for myself, which you should totally check out by the way. However, these builds and all those different things, that will never be something that applies to survival, because you always start off with the same gear, you have full greens and a green pistol. And you will never make a full build, you're just looking to get as much blues or purples as you can so you can complete the session. This is how survival is designed, and I'm not saying that that should be changed, but for that reason, survival needs to be exceptionally good at keeping players on their toes for as long as possible. Or else, a lot of that initial excitement that will fall off very fast. Now when it comes down to solo play versus group play, I think it is going to be a difficult thing to balance out. Of course, you do want the game to be difficult for those solo players because you want it to be a challenge, but at the same time, you also want to keep the incentive to group up with other players that you might meet. Part of why PvE also has those 24-player servers is to give players the option to work together. So the payoff is that the content is a lot easier when you actually do so. You feel safer, but maybe you feel a little bit too safe. The first thing that jumps to mind when thinking about why group play is so much easier than solo play is again because of those free revives. I already mentioned this earlier, but you can go down as many times as you want, from whatever you want. As I said, you can die from the cold, from any NPCs, you can mess up 1,000,000 times. But it all doesn't matter because your buddies can still get you and bring you back to almost full health for free. Every single time. That alone takes a big part of the survival out of the survival. Coming back to that horror game for just a second, imagine if getting caught by the monster or the alien or the ghost or whatever you're up against. Imagine if getting caught did not matter and did not result in a death. If that were to be the case, you wouldn't be on your toes as much, you wouldn't really care that much, and you could kind of do whatever you want, die, and then your friend could still come and get you. It wouldn't be as scary or as immersive, right? So, if anything, something should be done against this first and foremost. You know, going down should be punished, even in group play. Now, I do not want them to take away the whole revival mechanic, that would be quite bad to be honest. But I think what they should do, or what they at least should consider, is that every time that you revive someone, you should be required to use a medkit in order to do so. Just like you have to use a medkit on someone when he is completely down for those 5 minutes. This way, a player never really goes down for free, and there may be moments when you cannot revive that teammate in a fight. The game mode will be a lot less forgiving towards those group players, while keeping the solo experience the same as it is right now. And I think that's a very good thing. However, if the developers do not want to go down that route, then at the very least, make it so that players that die from things such as the cold, or players that go down while they're freezing, because, you know, they might have been freezing all the time, but then their last hit is from an NPC. Players that die from things such as the cold, or that die repeatedly in a short period of time, let them go to the dead state instantly, so that in those cases, players will have to pay that medkit in order to revive them. Now, what I would really like to see, even though this is very unlikely that this is actually going to happen, is them adding a hard mode to survival that is balanced for more experienced players, maybe group play, and really pushes even those 4-man groups to their limits. Of course, better rewards would also go with completing an activity like this, you know, so that everybody at least wants to give it a try. And when I say upping the difficulty, I'm not just talking about buffing the NPCs a bit. I think the NPCs, they can be very hard to take down, especially the ones in the Dark Zone. So I don't think that these need a buff per se. But when I'm talking about increasing the difficulty, I'm more so talking about making the survival mechanics a lot more harsh. In previous content, the higher difficulty has always meant more health and more damage for the NPCs, or maybe a different composition of enemies here and there. But now, with survival, you have all these newly introduced mechanics, so use them to alter the difficulty in the game. Let people freeze up faster, or let them permanently lose their maximum health when they're freezing. Let hunger halve all the healing received on top of its current effects. Let the thirst disable all your skills or increase the infection rate. There are so many options here depending on what route you want to go, and I think that would make the game a whole lot more exciting and a whole lot more survival-like. The second thing that you could do is introduce the hunters to the players a lot earlier in the game. I simply refuse to believe that these cool new player-like enemies are made for the sole purpose of showing up for a few minutes after you called in an extraction at the end of the survival game mode. And I think that it would be really cool when players that play on hard mode can meet these hunters as soon as they step foot into the Dark Zone. This way, you kinda keep that uncertainty feeling with you and you always have to be on the lookout and prepared. That is gonna keep you on your toes. Maybe, and this is a really crazy idea, make them even hunt you down from the very start, even before you go into the Dark Zone. You know, before you are ready to fight them, so you'd have to run away from them while trying to scavenge those supplies. Remember that horror game again. The scariest enemies are the ones that you cannot fight. And if these hunters would be hunting you from the very start, I think that would make for a very intense gameplay scenario. On top of that, I think that Massive could also do a lot more with the virus infection itself. Of course, I'm not just talking about lowering the death timers so that the medicine and painkillers are somewhat mandatory. I think that they should do that regardless. But I've also seen that Massive has added different stages of the virus. You've got stage 1 all the way up to stage 4. However, as far as I can tell, none of these different stages have any effect on the player, which in my eyes is just another wasted opportunity. Now, if Massive is okay with this being a rather easy and not so much survival-like experience for those players that choose to group up, then so be it, right? At the end of the day, if you really want a challenge, you can always make the decision yourself to play alone. But at the very least, and I think that this is really important as well, do not put the players who queue in survival by themselves in the same game with those 4-man pre-made teams. Because it's pretty stupid that if you're only 10 minutes into your survival session, you're getting ganked by 4 players that were already playing together. Kinda makes it pointless to start up a survival session by yourself, knowing that you might run into a 4-man group right away. You should know all about that, Hamish. One more thing that I thought was also worth mentioning is that I believe that the player names above players should be removed a lot faster after fighting each other. I've had moments where I was able to follow another player that was miles away from me, far out of my sight, because he recently shot me and his name and his health bar kept showing up on my screen. Of course, he was very weak already because we recently had a fight, and now this guy was almost dead, and he might have survived if it wasn't for the name above his head. And those are my thoughts on the survival game mode. As I said, I think that the groundwork has been done. The game mode feels nice, it looks nice, and it is exciting, but only when you start off by yourself, when you start off solo. In my opinion, the game lacks difficulty as soon as players start to group up from the very start, and I also feel that the new survival features aren't explored enough. I understand that there are also a lot of players that want to keep the game mode exactly like it is right now, so that's why I'm suggesting that they should add a hard mode to survival that drastically changes up things and makes it a lot more survival-like. And that was it. I'm gonna let you go for now. Of course, let me know what you think. And as always, I will see you guys later, or like they say in the Netherlands. Zie je later.